I guess I'd start with the big picture thoughts on policy and kind of what we do here in this country. And I think maybe set the tone by saying that's why I think we don't need to knee jerk and we don't need to panic, but we need to lean in a little bit. In that we kind of made a mockery of this 2018 federal farm bill.
That's Jeremy Klettke from Davis Hemp Farms in Oregon, and this is the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. Hello there, it's me, Eric Herlock. I'm your host. Welcome back to the Hemp Show. So there's a lot of hemp news happening right now. Like we've waited so patiently for essentially nothing to happen except intoxicating cannabinoids to make their rise in the world. And then suddenly, boom, last week, everything changed. Or it feels like it's about to change. Things are changing. So I feel like I have a lot of people that I want to talk to about this. I want to get their perspectives on things. So that's why I'm talking to Jeremy Klettke today. I want to get his perspective. What changed? What didn't? And why he thinks this moment calls for clarity and engagement rather than panic. We'll talk about the new definition of hemp, what it means for farmers and seed producers, and how Jeremy sees the path forward for an industry that's been pulled in too many directions for too long. So stay tuned for an interesting conversation with Jeremy. I'm also going to tell you about a new report that looks at the hemp industries in Australia and New Zealand. So more on that right after these messages. This episode is brought to you in part by I&D Hemp in Fort Benton, Montana, where they believe in the goodness of hemp. I&D Hemp is a family-owned, mission-driven industrial hemp food, feed, and fiber company that's providing new opportunities for American farmers. Learn more at indhemp.com. Okay, welcome back. So, got a nugget of hemp news here for you. It's about a new report, a comprehensive new report on the hemp industries of Australia and New Zealand. It's published this week by Hemp Today in collaboration with Canna Markets Group. The document draws on stakeholder interviews, internal industry materials, and national-level data to provide one of the clearest assessments to date of how hemp is developing in both countries and where the primary constraints lie. In Australia, the report describes an industry moving deliberately from early enthusiasm to operational discipline. While grain remains stable, the strongest momentum is in fiber and herd, where processors emphasized covered storage, reliable acreage within freight range, and year-round throughput planning. Investors interviewed for the report stressed that financing follows repeatability and contractual commitments, not projections or optimism. The report also identifies regulatory fragmentation as Australia's most significant barrier. Rules governing food, fiber, and cannabinoids vary from state to state, creating uncertainty for processors and growers. The authors argue that progress will depend on bringing these frameworks into alignment. Food regulated under food law, fiber treated as an industrial raw material, and cannabinoid products governed by the Therapeutic Goods Administration, the TGA. That's Australia's equivalent of the FDA for medicines and therapeutic goods. On the other side of the Tasman Sea, over there in New Zealand, the sector is smaller, but structurally focused. Development occurs only where market access, logistics, and processing capacity are synchronized. However, the industry remains constrained by outdated legislation that still classifies hemp as a controlled substance, even when produced strictly for seed or fiber. According to the report, enabling full plant utilization, including stem, seed, and associated co-products, is essential to advancing the sector beyond its current footprint. Taken together, the findings from both countries reinforce a central conclusion: certainty scales. Clear rules, consistent processing infrastructure, and predictable year-to-year production are the conditions under which meaningful industrial hemp growth can occur. The report aims to provide governments, producers, and processors with a factual baseline for making those decisions. So I will have a big old link to this report on the show page for this episode at Lancaster Farming. You can also find it at hemptoday.net, so check it out. All right, moving on to the main event of our show today. It's my conversation with Jeremy Klettke from Davis Hemp Farms. Here we go. Jeremy Klettke from Davis Hemp Farms. Welcome back to the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing excellent, Eric. Thank you very much for having me today. It's good to see you again.
Likewise. Yeah, it's good to hear your voice. I always like to check in with you when things get, a little crazy out there in the hemp space because, just based on conversations that you and I have had over the years, I have just an absolute respect for your relationship with the cannabis plant and how you work with the plant in the world and your path in the world. So thank you for joining me here today. There's some crazy hemp news in the world these days, so I want to check in with you about that. But first, tell me how you are and then give us a quick introduction.
Sure. Well, I'm doing great. We're doing great as a company. I'm enjoying the work that we get to do with the plant a great deal. And, again, as the background, I'm founder of Davis Farms. Davis Farms is a hemp seed provider primarily for CBD, which is the thing we're after in the industry, but also flavorants and other cannabinoids as well. So that's kind of what we do. And yeah, we're doing great and we're having a good time doing it. And I would love to talk a little bit about how I see this change in U.S. policy.
Yeah, so things change. Like we've been waiting and waiting and waiting for years for something to change or for the FDA to step up or the USDA to do, Congress to act, like somebody needed to do something, but nothing was happening. And so there was lots of vacuums getting filled by certain things. And then boom, last week they reopened the government. Mitch McConnell got his language in there. Rand Paul couldn't battle him. They got it through. Now there's this different hemp definition. So maybe first start with, how do you understand this new language? And then we'll talk about what it means for the industry and for you specifically. But how do you understand what just happened?
Sure. And if I may, I'd say just big picture. And I started out this way just before we came on air a little bit, Eric, to just say that I think that we've moved away from the intent of the 2018 Farm Bill, the USDA Farm Bill, and the opportunity that we were given a little bit. And I understand it's our nature as Americans to find pathways that suit us, loopholes, if you will. And even more, I think that the nature of the cannabis industry and the people around it have shown their tenacity and their desire to succeed in ways that, I wouldn't say subvert, but certainly can maybe misuse the language or the looseness of the language that was written up for us. And so as we all know, that's kind of what's happened in this hemp industry. And we now have these intoxicating products that are hitting the marketplace, and they're coming under the guise of being hemp derived. And, as much as I'm a cannabis person all around, I see the value and benefits of all sides of cannabis, intoxicating cannabinoids, every compound that we have in this cornucopia of a plant. I have to say that the nature of hemp isn't about intoxicating cannabinoids. The plant is food, fuel, fiber, and medicine, but we can't mix those two sides in the world that we live in, I don't feel. It creates a lot of problems. And so that's kind of what we've done. And I think that the language that we're putting out there is set up to really sort of put a correction to that, sort of take the fear away from what is happening around how these products are getting into gas stations and which markets they may be serving that they shouldn't be serving. So I really think they're trying to work to close the loop on that. And I don't think it's something that anybody should necessarily panic about.
I've seen a lot of panic online these days on the social medias. There's the hemp industry is over. The federal government just, killed the hemp industry, big, all of these things. And what I hear you saying is like, that's not true. There's no reason to panic, but it's not like nothing happened.
Right. And so I think it's important. We've been given the 12-month opportunity to lean in or weigh in and offer our viewpoint, from the hemp industry, and certainly sort of affect how that legislation is drafted and how it goes forward, and certainly how the regulatory side of that happens after the legislative component element is put in place. So I don't think anybody needs to panic. I think the people who should be concerned are the people who have created hemp-derived intoxicating products, because that's not the nature or intent of the industry. And it certainly works against the grain and fiber people. It works against some of the more important elements of the industry that do have impact on some of these industrial applications. And, things that BMW or Audi or Porsche or Patagonia
Harley
are
Davidson.
looking
Yeah.
right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we don't want to slow that down in any way or muddy that water. And so I think it is an important correction that's happening. But I do want to highlight that if we had really just stuck to the intent of the 2018 federal farm bill, which was really about industrial hemp and fairly allowed CBD or resin as an end use into these products, which it should be, because terpenes and flavorants can certainly be extracted from these to serve health and beauty, to serve the beverage industry and so many other places. So there are uses for the CBD end of things or the resin products, but that was a tag on almost to what industrial applications of hemp really are all about, right? And so, yes, we've been given an opportunity to grow at scale and under a regulatory structure that was placing us more into the, an agricultural commodity umbrella than it was, placing it into like the cannabis world. And so I think we are correcting that. And I think it's really important that we do, because there was a fork in the road. And if we don't make a change in that fork, it will start to impact more and more of the true industrial applications.
Right. How does it affect Davis Hemp Farms? Like you've got 365 days. Like what happens next? What are you about to do?
Well, for the industry as a whole, I would certainly like to offer public testimony wherever possible and rational testimony and support sort of a reasonable deployment of whatever legislative change we're going to have. But as far as the company goes, this is one place that we didn't make an error. We are a compliant company, even to the extent of really being the only company that bred genetics for total THC compliance at 0.3, because even when we talk about the CBD industry alone, or the flower side of CBD, or full spectrum products that are derived from CBD, we do have a consumer responsibility. And so we have a situation in the US where we have a 30-day pre-harvest test report requirement on these products. They're not tested again. So you don't see the true potential of THC in a lot of these, right? So for us, these changes sort of are likely going to impact that side of things. They're going to stop a situation where you have a COA that is not representative of the product that you have on the shelf. And when we talk about, I don't know how familiar you are with the THCA flower element of this.
I've heard some stories. It boggles my mind how the gymnastics you have to do to say that THCA flower isn't marijuana. I don't know.
Well, and that's playing that loophole to the ultimate extreme, right?
Yeah.
Of that 30-day pre-harvest, no consumer responsibility. Any decarboxylation or maturation of that product changes that THCA to intoxicating THC. Even consuming it, the body is capable of decarbing some of it, converting some of it. So, yeah, those are clearly intoxicating products, and they're not what should be on the shelf. So for us, we have products that when you grow them to full maturity, they are at 0.3. We're also a seed company, and the seed side of things, I think, is another interesting part of this, where I see some corrections maybe coming into place. Just like we're going to have consumer responsibility for the end products, I also think that we're going to see the seed side of this fall much more under the standard biosecurity acts and phytosanitary requirements that traditional agricultural seed is falling under or falls under, so that change won't impact us either, because of the way that we have been a compliant company who understands the importance of not spreading or contaminating other areas with bad seed, and has followed all those phytosanitary requirements, through our international sales, that it won't really impact us either. It's going to impact the people who are not compliant at maturity, either people who have 1% or greater products in THC at full maturity that are somehow compliant on a 30-day pre-harvest test report, or the people that are fully violating that and running high THC products out into the marketplace, like 20%. So they're going to be impacted. And I also think people who are not following standard operating procedures or protocols for how we deal with seed, those people will be impacted, meaning cannabis seed providers that are selling 10 packs of seeds without having any of that tested or legally labeled, those people will be impacted. Should they be afraid? No, not the seed side. I think it's an important thing for these people to come into compliance on that level because as a seed provider, we've seen, tobacco mosaic virus and hop latent viroid in other countries now. And I know that comes from us. And so it's really important from biosecurity aspect that these guys do start to fall into compliance. And so I think these hemp requirements related to seed are going to sort of start to congeal or solidify that. But yeah, I don't think anybody in the real hemp world needs to be concerned at all. It may shorten or narrow your options for genetics that you have. But those genetics are also going to be improved. They're going to be things that are certified and registered. So now you can count on them and their outcomes, which has been a problem for the farmer. I also think, for the beverage providers or any of these people that are really, really concerned, you may not be able to provide as high efficacy of product or an efficacious product to the marketplace by not using a full spectrum. But if you're just stuck to a 0.4 requirement and the goal is to not intoxicate people, I believe that those are things that aren't going to kill companies, but force them to come into tighter levels of compliance, right? Which for a consumer and consumer responsibility, I don't see how that can be a bad thing. For the larger, as I said earlier, industrial applications in the industry, I don't see how that can be a bad thing. So I really don't. I think we must be mindful and engaged and thoughtful because we steer this industry, people like you, Eric, myself, because the industry is small. It doesn't have a ton of people that have been in it for decades. So I think we have to be thoughtful, but fearful. I don't think we should be fearful.
Okay, so I don't know if I have this fully worked out in my head. So I'm gonna just talk a little bit and then see where it goes. But so there are states in the U.S. where they have a recreational marijuana program and they have a medical marijuana program, all right? And even though those things are federally illegal, I wonder, is there any room or opportunity for, something in between, hemp, which is legal federally, fiber and grain, seed, whatever, and then marijuana, and then because there's clearly market need for the medicine from CBD, people get great relief from that. And from what it sounds like, a lot of those products, have a full spectrum thing. The THC factor is going to make those things just disappear. Mm-hmm. But that need for those products is still there because there's a whole group of people who are like, oh, no, that was way better than pharmaceuticals. So does that open up an opportunity for state departments of health or state departments of ag to create this middle channel for CBD medicine that's not called hemp and it's not called marijuana? I don't know. What do you think of that?
It's a brilliant idea. Does it open up that pathway? Absolutely. And should that pathway likely be there? I think it should be. Unfortunately, I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think that those people that you mentioned, that segment of people who are benefiting from those higher efficacy full spectrum products will suffer. I think that those products will be the products that will unfortunately have to leave the market. And there are some small farms that I think are going to suffer from that. But my hope is, Eric, that they've already recognized the value of full spectrum and that they start to rework or reformulate their products in a way that even if they have to make them partially isolate based to lower that THC content, that they still push that threshold up so that they still run enough of that full spectrum product to retain a little bit of THC. Okay. Because I think you can probably keep most of the efficacy and still keep under that threshold. But yes, you hit it right on the head. Is we do need a third pathway to service that market and those type of people. They're such a narrow segment though, and people are so afraid of THC at the state level even today that I just don't think we're going to see that third pathway. Now let's put a pin in that right now and
Come back to
between you
that.
and I, that should be there. Yes.
Well, maybe somebody's listening and they'll hear that idea and they'll like, oh, and then they'll run with it. So
right.
if someone's running with it, let us know.
Please do, because we will have lower efficacy products on the market with what
go.
we're seeing right now. Absolutely.
So on a previous episode, I was talking to Danielle Bernstein. She's from Laurel Crest.
Yeah, from
you
Laurel
probably
Crest.
know her.
Yeah, we know Danielle.
Yeah,
sure.
And they're a cannabinoid company, CBD, CBN, all these things, and they make hemp-based ingredients that go into the dispensary market, like the marijuana products. Those companies are buying her hemp-based products for additional cannabinoids in these like effect-focused products that they're
for
selling.
The minors. Yeah, right.
Yeah, and she's like, no. So now the marijuana market's going to suffer from this because everything is kind of connected. And she's working with Morgan Tweet from I&D Hemp, and who's working with Hemp Feed Coalition and National Hemp Association and HEMI, and they have an interesting plan to address this. They've got, I can send you some things, but they've got they're teaming up, fiber, grain, and flour. So it's a neat combination.
Well, that's an important step on its own, Eric, because I think there has been a desire for those other industrial applications to separate themselves from this dirtier element of cannabinoid or CBD hemp. And I think that is really not the right pathway. So any place that we can see an alignment of all of these groups, the industry is in its nascency. I don't think you can deny the need for flavorants and in non-intoxicating cannabinoids at an industrial scale. So I think right there that qualifies them in as one of the industrial end uses or applications. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's really important that Laurel Crest and Morgan and it's kind of funny going back early, I don't know, maybe 2018, 19, 20, somewhere around there. It's been a few years. The irony of what we're talking about is not lost on me, because we had Danielle's father, along with Ben Brimlow, who was from IND early on a podcast of ours that we did, a Davis Farms webinar.
Okay.
With both of those. And I think some of the content was really about, hey, look, we have all these applications. Let's start to, talk about processing and what processing looked like in these different avenues and how we align and overlap, or do we? So yeah, it's funny that both of those people were there. And again, IND is instrumental right now in what's happening within, the industrial side of things.
Yeah, for sure.
I think Laurel Crest is instrumental in showing the value of these other things besides CBD.
Yeah. And Morgan and Danielle are, taking a leadership role here. And that's what we need. I mean, to be frank, we need new leadership in these endeavors. I think in the past 6-7 years, the same kind of advocacy groups and the same names. So I'm looking forward to, this sort of a new paradigm that we're moving into. There's a couple of things that I hear in my head, in your voice, mm-hmm. throughout my life now. Mm-hmm. One of them is that, you talk about sort of like the miracle of the plant, but it's like you said something like, the plant will provide pretty much anything we want if we ask it the right way. And that to me is incredible. And I see it, as I'm, learning about the industry as it's developing. I see that happening. The other thing that I remember you describing was, we were talking about intelligence of plants. And you described, like, if you were to walk through one of your greenhouses, your plants, your cannabis plants are there, your hemp plants, and you walk through, and no big deal. You'll just walk through, right? But let's say someone else comes in, someone that doesn't know the plants, someone who hasn't been in this environment before. Let's say it's me. Let's say I walk into your greenhouse. I'll walk through your plants, and your plants will kind of like, I don't know. You described this to me, that they'll kind of like move out of the way, like, hey, we like, they're aware of more than we could ever possibly know.
So they're hyper aware, and again, Aaron Appleby will talk a bit more about that too, because he knows he and I are breaking it down to why you become aware of these things and the plant intelligence and the plant's responses. But then there's the why, and without the why, science has a really hard time accepting that, right?
It's
And
all
then
woo-woo until there's some science behind it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the story that I tell you, and this is actually how we would train the people working for Davis and working with the plants in particular, like the lead people all understood this very early on working with us, is so the plants, they will do what I call flagging when someone who's not aware of them walks through them. And I think even only a small subset of real cannabis growers get this, because it takes time to tune in with the plants and build that relationship. But when I can send any of my new crew members down through the greenhouse, and they can walk down through the greenhouse. And when they come back to me, then I can show them. I can say, see, look at the disturbance. And the leaves they'll flip upside down and they flag, they respond. We call it flagging. And then I can go to another aisle and I can walk down that same aisle and walk back. And I'll do it even more aggressively. I'll say, to them, walk down that aisle very carefully and back to me and show them. And then I will walk down that aisle very aggressively and walk back, and the plants don't flag. And that's, to me, is a really clear sign of plant intelligence. And it's a good way to show people that, hey, look, this is real. These plants understand who we are, what we're doing, what our intention is. And, we need to accept the fact that at the very least, there's a parallel relationship happening here, that we're not this thing with Dominion doing all of the work. Yeah.
Bingo. And that's been the issue all along, is that we thought, there's some texts that sort of give us dominion over things, but maybe that's a mistranslation. Maybe it's more like, we are part of nature. We can't dominate nature, I guess, is the thing we forget.
I don't know. Maybe if you look at it like we've been given this opposable grip and this mind that thinks a little bit differently, so that we could go in and sort of balance things faster. Things get out of balance, like, the rabbit population's up because the coyote population's down. Well, now there's going to be disease eventually that's going to impact the rabbit population to take it down. That's what naturally has to happen. Well, maybe as a human beings, we're supposed to get in there and, okay, look, if we can speed this up, we see this problem, because we're the only thing on this planet that operates that way.
Because we can manipulate with this, with these hands of ours.
That kind of dominion. If we took dominion from a corrective rather than destructive pathway, but we do take dominion that we have a control, and unfortunately we don't see all that intelligence a lot. But yeah, the plant intelligence thing is fun and it's super real. I think Aaron said that not only can these plants tell whether it's a biting, sucking, and this is one of my favorite things he said, whether it's a biting, sucking, or a piercing insect, they can tell the difference between that and send out a chemical signature. But they can tell the difference between the aphid, the species, by its foot patterns and how it walks. So they'll send out a slightly different signature for the bong aphid than they will for the standard aphid, for the cannabis aphid than they will for. So, the plant intelligence there is super real.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Well, and we dumb down plants when we hybridize them. That's one of the beautiful things about cannabis and being left alone through this time of breeding of man, where we're trying to monocrop everything and really, really polyhybridize everything to the point where, or overhybridize everything to the point where it's so true to type that it's vulnerable. Like I just saw this crown rust rot on soybean crops that's started in Louisiana, and now it's hitting Illinois, and they're amazed by the how rapidly it's spread, because it was only in one county in Illinois and now it's in 11 counties in Illinois, and this is in 2 years or something like that. And it just speaks to this plant intelligence. Like, this is a beautiful thing about cannabis and an opportunity we've been given, in agriculture, that we have this really important plant. It's a really important commodity. It's going to be such an important commodity for bioplastics, for all the things that these big corporations need for corporate social responsibility, right? It's coming. So we have this opportunity now to not dumb this plant down to the point where it's prone to any single disease coming in and completely wiping it out. So unfortunately, that's the downside of what we've done through this last 80 or 90 years of over-hybridization that we've, and this is the beauty and the curse of science. We've moved things along so far, but, we have an opportunity here to look at this genome a little differently and how we breed it and how we hybridize it. So,
yeah, all that. This is why I like to call you up. Hear you talk about stuff. That.
Thank you, Eric.
I also like to get you talking about the golden ratio. What have you been thinking about the golden ratio lately, and how does it affect your work in cannabis?
I think everything's driven by sacred geometry. And I think, looking at vibration, how that impacts us, shape, the order of nature. I think that's why you hear me talk about phi, and why you hear me talk about that ratio, and why I try to present these, pictures of how it works like I have in the past, is because I think as soon as we start to look at nature, all that stuff becomes common, rather than, okay, that's a leaf and that's that and this is this and I'm a person and that's that. Well, wait, we're all the same thing. We're all the same mathematics. We're all the same structure. We're all the same geometry. So I guess that's the only evolution I have to say on that, because I think we've already talked about the bees.
Yeah, we talked about the bees.
Yeah, and some of the other things.
Tell me about phi. You mentioned the word phi.
Well, I would want everybody to know that, phi is a letter. It's a few things. It represents a few things. It's a letter in the Greek alphabet, but it's also, when we talk about the Trinity in the current dogma, right? When we talk about the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, in the Septuagint, in the Greek Bible, it is the Father, the Son, and phi. And phi, in that Trinity, represents the sacred feminine, or the core of the feminine archetype. So they had the parents and the son, right? So they represented the feminine there. But what's really interesting about that is that phi, which is the core of the feminine archetype in the Septuagint, is that letter, right, in the Greek alphabet, that also represents that ratio, 1.618 to 1. So that letter is the feminine, and it's also that exact ratio that we went on to call the Fibonacci, or phi, right? So that is phi. So I think it's kind of interesting and something to take a look at, that those people who understood so much about nature and geometry and helped us to evolve, and there's so many things that we still use from the Greeks that helped us along, that they saw that as the core of the feminine. And I'm being silly. There's a third element to that. The core of the feminine archetype, wisdom, and the ratio, 1.618 to 1, which is phi. So all three of those things are represented by that same symbol.
All right. Now, is that the same phi in the name Sophia?
It is.
Okay.
It is. Yes, absolutely.
All right. Huh. So, I thank you so much for taking my random questions.
That is so out there.
Yeah, but it's connected.
Sure.
Everything's connected.
No, everything is connected, and what we're doing is about connectivity. Like, even moving this industry forward, it's all about community. It's all about
cannabis
connectivity.
Loves community.
It does.
Yeah.
Cannabis loves community. It seems silly, like you say, the woo woo. I love that, but no, this plant actually really loves community. It loves a collective effort. So when I say it's time for us all to lean in a little bit and affect the policy, the rational policy
Now's
that we
the time.
want.
Yeah.
Because what happened, Eric? Our silence in affecting rational policy allowed all this stuff to fester. And then you had cannabis packs going, well, you're under-regulated and we paid for all this, and then they start literally cannibalizing each other. So it really, like, we must really communicate.
Yeah. Now's the time to come together. Yeah. So, but just to reiterate, the sky's not falling. Everything's going to be fine. But yeah, it's a call to action. Come together, figure this out, and onward.
Yeah, and I don't know if everything's going to be fine. Who knows? But the bottom line, it is a CTA. You just nailed it right on the head, and it's a collective CTA. So, kudos to Danielle and Morgan and anybody else who comes together. We can't have the infighting. It's one plant. And there's a collective effort here for all of it. And it's disruptive, people. Remember that. At the end of the day, it's a disruptive plant. It's something that takes a lot of time and understanding and money for groups like pharmaceutical or the petrochemical industry or the plastics industry to adopt. So that's always going to create more friction. which really means that we all must lean in a little bit more to make sure that we meet that friction head on and with thoughtfulness so that we can effect rational and reasonable policy. Because guess what? Rational and reasonable hemp policy or cannabis policy has nothing but a positive impact on our kids and their kids and their kids, which is what we're all here to do, right?
Amen to that. Jeremy Klettke, it is always so great to talk to you. Thank you for your time and your wisdom and your kindness, and your patience, all that.
Thank you, Eric. Are you kidding me? I love talking with you. You always pull me into some odd place though, where I'm a little uncomfortable, but I still enjoy talking with you. So thank you so much for having me, and thank you, Big Picture, for doing what you do. What you do is really important for everybody. You bring the right people to have an opportunity to express their voice, and I really appreciate through the years you've not only helped our company, you've helped me, the same sort of thoughtfulness and kindness, but you've helped this industry, I think, in ways that it's really hard to measure. I would just close by, again, citing the moment that we're at NOCO in 2022, I think, and I'm with our Uruguayan partner, and we're sitting at a table, and I say, well, can you meet, have you met Eric Herlock? He runs the Lancaster. Oh, I listen to that part of every week. That's my favorite podcast. The guy from Uruguay, so the South American, 6,000 miles away. Yeah. Yes, so you have a big impact on everybody in this space. So thank you, Eric.
Well, that's a good reminder, because I don't really pay attention to a lot of that stuff. I'm just doing what I do, and for me, it's about people hearing stories, and I am optimistic about a specific thing in the future, and the people here in this industry are building the future that I'm optimistic about. So it's like a circle of gratitude and love. So
awesome.
All right,
awesome,
Jeremy. I know you're busy. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, there you go. Just like that, the show is coming to an end. Thank you for listening. My name is Eric Herlock. I am the senior digital editor here at Lancaster Farming newspaper, the greatest agricultural newspaper in the world. Check us out online at lancasterfarming.com. Sign up for our newsletters. Get a subscription to our print edition. Read stories about farming. Yes, it's all there waiting for you. And if you have any questions or comments or concerns, or you just want to say, hey, send an email to me, Eric. Send it to ehurlock@lancasterfarming.com. Until next time, I'll see you in the newspaper.
This episode of The Hemp Show was written, recorded, and produced by Eric Herlock. Mixing and mastering by Justin Berger. Music by Eric Herlock, with additional music from Blue Dot Sessions. The Hemp Show is copyright 2025 by Lancaster Farming newspaper, part of the Steinman Communications family.
Oh, hey, good. You're still here. I realized after we put this whole show together that this is the episode that's going to go out right before Thanksgiving. So this is the Thanksgiving episode, I guess. So with that in mind, I wanted to share a song with you that I wrote recently, just a couple of weeks ago. And I guess you could call it a Thanksgiving song. So anyway, here's something from me to you. I hope you have a wonderful holiday with your family. And there is a lot to be grateful for.
I woke up this morning with an old tune in my head. It reminded me of something that I think I thought you said. I kept on strumming just to see what I could find in this box of wishes and these old bottles of time. I want to thank you for your goodness, your steadfast love endures. Let everybody say so, and let everybody be redeemed. Everybody be redeemed. Everybody be redeemed. I went up to the mountain to see what I could see. Spent 3 whole days in silence, listening to the falling leaves. The wind kept on blowing, I was in need of some repair. The spirits will sit up and listen if they hear crying in your prayers. I want to thank you for your goodness, your steadfast love endures. Let everybody say so, and let everybody be redeemed. Everybody be redeemed. Everybody be redeemed. Went down to the river to get my laces wet. Halfway across the water, my shoes filled up with regret. I have faith in something larger than the world I see. I just keep moving, it's the path that chooses me. I want to thank you for your goodness, your steadfast love endures. Let everybody say so, and let everybody be redeemed. Everybody be redeemed. Everybody be redeemed. Everybody be redeemed.